It's Texas Tech, it's Houston. It's Houston Blue this weekend in the third ward as the rivalry returns to the Houston.
You are Locked On Texas Tech, your daily podcast on the Texas Tech Red Raiders. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
It is a crossover edition of Locked On Cougs and Locked On Texas Tech. I'm Mr. Locked On Cougs Park Andrew, joined by Chris Level of Locked On Texas Tech. Today's show is brought to you by everybody's over at FanDuel, America's #1 sportsbook. And we got more on that fun, specifically, frankly, in this matchup later. But Houston, Texas Tech, a rivalry is kicking back off. We'll talk about if that's fair or not. Chris has chuckled a couple times while I'm talking about that. We'll also talk about matchups in the second segment and then what it takes to win and what a win looks like. Maybe get into predictive kind of stuff in that one. But Chris, now I'm not going to date anyone in this, but the Southwest Conference days would have called this a rivalry. The last 30 years feel different. Do you think it's fair to call it that yet, or is it not there yet?
Well, I think it may be that way or starting to turn into that a bit with basketball. There's been some spiciness and competitiveness and all that. And it's funny you say that, and that's why I was laughing when you said it, because two things. One, who is Houston's rival? Do you have one?
Yeah. We play for a trophy with Rice, but that's not
okay. Yeah, but So maybe it's Rice. I don't know if anybody from a fan standpoint looks at it like that or sinks their teeth into it. You know, some of what I think Tech wanted to be their rival are no longer in the league. You know, whether that's A&M, whether that's Texas. I think that. So and are these two teams going to play every year? I mean, so that's why I just kind of there's a lot going on here, and you know this, these two teams haven't played a ton over the last 15 years, but Houston has been a really good program, but Texas Tech in this particular series, it's been a bit lopsided, and I will say this: one of your better teams, and I guess it was 2009. Went to Houston and got beat, and I think that kind of shocked the system for everybody. But so anyway, I rivalry, I don't know. I mean, it's like we can each stick our hand out and agree to shake it or not. I don't know if it's like a rivalry or not, or it will become one. But I can't tell you who Texas Tech's rival is right now in this league. They didn't let you play Baylor or TCU. Oklahoma State wasn't on your schedule 2 years ago, and that's not a protected game or anything like that. So, heck, man, I don't know. I mean,
well, and I don't mean to speak ill of Lubbock because I got family in Lubbock. I got family buried in Lubbock. Lubbock's not. I like Lubbock plenty. I think people don't know that about me. That I like Lubbock plenty, but Houston's different in that alumni of all of these Big 12 schools and several SEC schools live in and around Houston, and this is their chance to see their team in their backyard. I also think there's a unique aspect this year, as you mentioned. This is your only road game in the state. Am I wrong? That to me means a lot of the non-Western part of Texas is going to be at this too. That I think that shapes it to make this one feel a little elevated, right?
Yeah, I mean, I think that's. I think the Texas Tech people would tell you, administration-wise, they would say the highest number of students with their undergraduate population come from the greater Houston area. I don't know if people would know that or not. I would have probably guessed the Metroplex, but I think it's actually Houston, depending on how far you expand that. And you're right. There's a lot of folks that can't get up to Lubbock all the time, but they could go make a day trip to Houston and go see their team play. I don't know how many fans are expected to be there from a Texas Tech standpoint, but when they played Ole Miss there a couple years ago in a bowl game at NRG, I mean, they had 40 to 50,000. That's a bowl game, so it's a bit different. The last time I was on the broadcast crew at the time, and Cliff Kingsbury was the coach, and I think it was 2017. And the irony of it was Tommy Tuberville was up on the TV call, up in the TV booth, and he had left this job. There was a lot of Tech fans at that game then. This seems to be a different deal. I want to ask you, Parker, because I don't want this to all be about Tech fans or whatever, but I'm just curious. Are the Houston, is the fan base there a bit, I don't want to say surprised, but like, I don't know a better word for it, but like pleasantly surprised, or like, because you've matched the win total from last year, right? And I can't imagine that everybody was like, after 4 games you'll be 4-0. I mean, but maybe everybody did. I don't know.
I think there are always going to be skeptics, always going to be people that are way too optimistic. I do think, though, that a big part of this season, and not to put too much weight on this weekend, Tech kind of felt like your first real test. You got an FCS school in Stephen F. Austin. You got to play Rice in your rivalry game, but as you mentioned, that's not the same kind of athletic program. Colorado is rebuilding. They lost a quarterback and a Heisman Trophy winner. Oregon State gave you more trouble than it's worth, but I think everyone, frankly, circled that as a trap feeling game. And you get to kind of this weekend show, like, okay, if you were looking ahead past Oregon State, well, then you should have been pretty prepared for this upcoming weekend, right? Like, that's kind of how that goes. I don't think people are surprised that they're 4-0 going into this one. I think there are surprises on this team, though, in that, like, they're scoring 30 points a game and those kind of things. And the defense doesn't have very, very big drop-off after losing some get transfers to power, blue bloody programs and Shieldwood up the road, right? And so I think people are surprised at some of the more qualitative aspects, but it was a relatively simple schedule in the front four. It's nice to be 4-0, 2 wins away from a bowl with a lot left. Feels nice, first time in a while. And I think that, frankly, Houston's using this, not to put, again, too much weight on it, but as a measuring stick. Like, this is your in-state rival in a lot of ways that you have, because you mentioned Texas, Texas A&M, Oklahoma aren't here, and you want to be comparative. You also, frankly, look, Chris, we all saw what happened in the thumping. Was that the word? The thumping in Salt Lake City, and I love that. But the thought there is, like, if you can show yourself against these guys after what they just did, you can kind of show yourself to the world in a lot of ways. That's a big deal.
Oh, that's fair. I think, while it may be like a real test or measuring stick or anything like that for Houston, like for Texas Tech, it's about validating the Utah win. Everybody's trying to pat you on the back and tell you that you've done this, you've done that, but like, unless you go validate it, it was just a blip on the radar. So that's kind of the that's kind of the storyline here. But it is good for, just like I thought the game with Utah and Salt Lake was a showcase game of sorts. This is another game that's really good for the Big 12. 2 undefeated teams. I don't know if back in the summer, if everybody looked at it and was like, yeah, Houston, Texas Tech are going to play Saturday night, in a primetime game on ESPN, in week 6 of the season, they're both going to be undefeated. I don't know if anybody would have circled that and be like, of course they are. I mean, I don't know if I'm buying that. So, but I think this is good for the Big 12. And I still think that this is what got me in trouble, even though I wasn't even trying to get in trouble, nor was I trying to talk smack to the Utah fan base. We still probably don't really know about either team really yet. That's why you're saying measuring stick. That's why Texas Tech is being asked, okay, can you go validate it? Because there's not really like a body of work just yet. You've seen glimpses. Houston's coming off of a game where they figured it out. I mean, Oregon State's not good. I saw them in person.
Flat.
They're not good, but it doesn't matter because you figured out a way when you didn't play your best. That's a sign of a really good team and a well-coached team and a together team. Texas Tech, hung in there with Utah, and it was a 13-10 game with about 8 minutes to go, and then you just kind of unloaded on them. And they're probably getting a lot of credit for that 8-minute stretch, and they did it with a backup quarterback. So can we paint Texas Tech with a broad brush yet and say, oh, they've got it all figured out? I don't see it that way yet. Now, a month from now, you start to string them together and stack them up, then maybe I would feel differently. But I just don't know if we still know everything there is to know about either one of these teams. That's the beauty of this sport, man.
Well, and it all comes down to, you don't play on paper. We don't play on microphones as much as we wish we would sometimes. I will say, the backup quarterback thing adds an interesting element to this. To me, there are some key players and matchups in this one that just are hard to ignore. A very talented roster at Tech and some guys that are kind of putting their name on radars at Houston. I want to get into those matchups and all that in 1 second, but I do want to remind folks that today's show is brought to you by Mazda, because Mazda crafts cars for those who do more than simply move. Now, Mazda delivers confidence with every ride, with more IIHS Top Safety Pick awards than anyone else. I know Chris has older kids. I got a toddler. Those IIHS Top Safety Pick things, that's a big deal when you're trying to pick a car to put a car seat in. Like our players, Mazda sweats every detail, because when you make every move count, impossible becomes irrelevant. Mazda, move and be moved. Today's show is also brought to you by our buddies at Monarch Money, because most people can't name all their financial accounts or even what they're worth, whether it's 401ks, properties, or investments. And when you don't have the full picture, you can end up leaving money on the table. That's why Monarch Money is all there for you. It's all-in-one personal finance tool that brings your entire financial life together in one clean, easy-to-use interface on your laptop or phone. It's built for people with busy lives. If you put off organizing your finances, Monarch is there for you. Monarch does all the heavy lifting, so you don't have to do anything yourself. You can link all your accounts in minutes. Again, I teach, coach, podcast, all one thing. See clear data visuals, get smart categorization of your spending, finally feel in control of your money without ever having to touch a spreadsheet. Don't let financial opportunities slip through the cracks. Use Locked On College, code Locked On College at monarchmoney.com in your browser for half off your first full year. That's 50% off your first year at monarchmoney.com with code Locked On College. Park Rangers, Chris Level here, crossing over a little bit to talk Houston and Texas Tech. And these are two rosters built very differently. Texas Tech went expensive and powered to them. I'm not a hater on that. I don't know if we hadn't talked about it, I guess you and I, Chris, but that's the name of the game now, and that's what they did. Houston, with a different set of resources, went out and found a bunch of guys from Louisiana Lafayette and UAB or U South Florida, like a bunch of guys from smaller programs. Carlos Allen, a key defense tackles at Kennesaw State before, right? Like, and got these guys and got them to the Power Four. Chris, you watch Texas Tech much closer than any of my audience. Is there a key matchup you see this weekend that you say, okay, if this goes our way, the game will go our way?
Well, and you know what's funny, Parker, is that they did spend money. There's no doubt, but a lot of the guys. One of their best defensive linemen is from UCF. One of the other ones is from Northern Illinois, from Stanford, from Georgia Tech, Houston, Charlotte, Mississippi State. So they brought in experienced guys that were under the radar at Group of Five and some Power Four programs. There's just not that many Power Four guys that came in. But to me, you're asking about a matchup in this particular game. Is that what I hear you asking?
Yeah.
So to me, I have one in particular, and it involves a former Red Raider and a current Houston Cougar. I am fascinated to see what Dalton Merriman does at tackle versus a guy like David Bailey. That's because Dalton Merriman is not in Lubbock anymore because of he really struggled against really big time pass rushers, namely the Colorado front last year, and it almost got Baron Morton killed. It just wasn't pretty. And I think he's a good lineman. I just think he struggles with elite pass rushers and fast guys with some twitch. So just one in particular, mano a mano, that one I would be very curious about.
Well, and I could sit here and like wax poetically about moving from left tackle to right tackle, and that's going to fix that doesn't fix everything. I'm not going to lie to you and say like I'm not worried about the David Bailey, Romello Height matchups potentially there, right? Like those guys are also very talented, and they're going to put both tackles for Houston to the test in a lot of ways. I'm intrigued by every week Houston plays who matches up with Tanner Kogel, right? 6'7", 6'8", tight end, big frame, wide catch radius. Because to me, if teams can't figure that out, he's going to get 9-10 catches. And if they do figure that out, then suddenly you have to kind of bend other things. Is there a safety or a linebacker? Who do you put on a 6'8" tight end in any sort of a coverage system?
Well, maybe the Big 12 Defensive Player of the Year and Jacob Rodriguez. You know, I mean he'll be tasked with that. Or they brought in Cole Wisniewski, who's a strong safety from North Dakota State. That's like 6'4", 220. He's a safety. And he Connors. I thought it was pronounced Koziol. So I guess I've screwed up on my own show because I thought it was pronounced. How did you say it?
I've been saying Kogel, and no one's ever like. It's
Okay,
almost but no one's.
my the pronunciation guide I got from Houston for the radio broadcast in preparation. I think it says it Koziel. So I'm just going to go off of that because I don't know. I don't want to screw it up. So one of us is probably right, or maybe there's the truth in between.
Or there's a third, yeah.
Whatever, yeah. He's a problem. There's no doubt. I think Dean Connors is a problem. The biggest problem is your guy who you've loved since the Houston got him is Connor Wegman. The problem that Houston potentially could have if they can't utilize their tight end and their running back to stay ahead of the chains is 3rd and long. This is not really what I think Houston has been good at this year. They did beat Oregon State deep over the top a couple of times in the 4th quarter, but it's just and I don't say this with any level of like cockiness or arrogance or anything. This is different kind of group of defense that I've ever seen in Lubbock before. Okay. And they're older, they're mature. And there's just not a lot of weakness on paper. Now, again, they have to go validate this. They're not the 85 Bears. That's not what I'm saying. But I do think they show up and they're much better in 3rd and longs. If Houston can avoid those situations, they're probably gonna hang in here. There's no doubt about that. But if they stay behind the chains and they're forced to, I just think Wegman is good. He's going to make some plays. He's that good with his legs, with his arm. He's going to make some plays. There's no doubt. But over the long haul, because this is what happened with Utah. Over the long haul, it's like, okay, we may get you. We may get you on a drive. We may get you a little bit. But you're not going to get us for a lot. And if you do, one of those kinds of things. So over 60 minutes, is that a way to live if you're in 3rd and long and playing from behind or whatever? So because that would be my biggest question for Houston in this game is, can they score enough points? How can they score enough points? Because it may take 24, 27, 31, and I know you said they're averaging 30 plus a game, but I think
different defenses though.
Well, yeah. And Utah was averaging 46 a game coming into that one. And again, this isn't a perfect Texas Tech team at all. I'm not suggesting that at all, but I just looking at the matchup and just because the biggest concern for Texas Tech is, are you flat? Do you come out from the bye week and it's just takes you a while to get going and you've got all these penalties like you had last time, and then Houston just takes advantage and they hang around and they're extremely well coached. Yeah, the bye week and Willie Fritz makes me the most nervous, with Connor Wegman being like a third.
I actually had a different coaching matchup in mind. Slade Nagel came to Houston in the offseason this past year, so he wasn't around for the first year of Willie Fritz.
From LSU, right?
Briefly at LSU, but really from Tulane more prominently before that. But was LSU most recently. And Shield Wood, obviously, is from Houston, is now at Tech. That coordinator chess match to me is interesting because it feels like when you look at what Nagel did at Tulane, they beat teams that had more talent on paper in front of them often while he was at Tulane, right? And they did it by playing the kind of mistake-free football you're talking. Now, Houston's 4 games into having Slade Nagel, so they're not like it's a finished product or anything, but by playing mistake-free football, taking well-timed shots and staying ahead of the chains. Shield Wood, I have a lot of respect for, obviously, as a coach, but I also, in my own show, said this week, like Houston, Fritz know him fairly well. I don't know if there's any chances there to take advantage of that knowledge either. Do you think that side of the football, you mentioned it's going to be hard to score 30 points, but I feel like there is like some leveling of it out that other teams might not be able to take advantage of.
Well, and obviously any knowledge goes both ways in that. I think Coach Wood was asked repeatedly in town this week about
he wouldn't talk about it at all.
he doesn't want to be a part of the story, like he doesn't want to make it about him. And yeah, he just wasn't going to acknowledge it. Like, I know what y'all are all doing, but I'm just not going to give that to you. I think you keep that behind closed doors. What I've been impressed with him here is that you see this really good coordinator and you come in and you're thinking, okay, what all is the stuff he's going to do? He hasn't really done, like, he rushes 4. They have one of the lowest blitz rates in the country because he doesn't have to. and he's kept it pretty simple. I think he's got a really good group of linebackers that he's specifically in charge of, and they just and he's moved a few pieces around a little bit, but it's been pretty fascinating to watch him kind of do his thing, because the previous coordinator here, Tim DeRuyter, phenomenal guy, knows a ton of defense. Coached at A&M, was a head coach at Fresno State, was a decent defensive coordinator at Oregon. He coached Von Miller and the guy that plays for the Giants right now, the name escapes me, that played for Oregon on the edge. Yeah, he's just, but his system was very complicated, and I think Coach Wood has been the opposite of that. And I think it's been pretty fascinating because it's clearly working. You don't have to be exotic when you've got really good players. You just let them make sure they're in the right spot and all that stuff. So Coach Wood actually mentioned that. I was like, man, I think that's what Houston does. They do a really good job of picking out when they want to take a shot and when they want to max protect. And it's our job to try to kind of figure out when those times are and be ready for it. So, I'm sure there's a chess match there somewhere, but this could be the boring side of the ball. The other side, the inverse of this, maybe where this game is decided.
I'm talking about deciding this game, actually. Nice segue in the third and final segment, because I think both teams have interesting paths to victory, and I don't know that they look alike. We might know early because of that, and I want to talk about that in a second. Before we get there, today's show is brought to you by our buddies over at FanDuel. The NFL season's here. FanDuel has an offer you don't want to miss. Right now, new customers can bet just $5 and get $300 back in bonus bets if you win. That's right. Pick a bet, put down $5, and if it hits, you'll unlock $300 in bonus bets used across the app. That's in-game parlays, before the game, over-unders, money line, anything you want over at FanDuel. So what are you waiting for? Visit FanDuel.com to download the FanDuel app today and get started. Today's show is also brought to you by Square. Now, it's your favorite neighborhood store. They're going to be running on Square. There's certain businesses that make the neighborhood itself. These are the places that become an extension of home, whether it's the sports bar dedicated to your team's fan base, the spot with the best wings in town for game day, or that beloved local chain that's been rooted in your community for years. These businesses are what bring people together. When neighborhood businesses thrive, the whole neighborhood thrives as well. Now, folks come to Houston for this game. Cochinita is a taco spot just across the freeway from the 3rd Ward. They run on Square, family-owned business, been operating since 2016 out of a truck. Now they're in a brick and mortar, and all thanks to their deal with Square. Right? Businesses run on Square. Square is a proud partner of more than 4 million neighborhood businesses around the world. You can go to square.com/go/lockedoncollege to learn more. Before you do, go support your favorite neighborhood spot. You'll be happy you did. Square. See you in the neighborhood. Chris, outside of dropping some taco references as we're playing some tortillas this week, we'll see if those things fly on the road. That'll be interesting to see how that would work. Now, aside from tortillas flying, Texas Tech wins this game to me if it becomes that scoring, in the 30s kind of. I love Houston. I love Connor. I think Tanner can do a lot of things at the tight end spot. Dean Connor, you mentioned running back. I don't know that I see them scoring 35, 38 points in this one to win.
They're not built for a shootout.
If Tech is on that path, I think that's a very clear Tech win, right?
Yeah, what's interesting is this has been the way of life in Lubbock for many years. Is like get into a shootout, you've got more bullets than the other guy. You're just going to keep swinging and all that. I don't know if you'll try to be in those kinds of games this year just because of how good you think your defense is. Maybe it is, maybe it is not. Joey in previous years, he's been very go for it on 4th down and like be aggressive and like this gives us an advantage. Like we're going to play the numbers, and now maybe you get into like, hey, let's punt it, let's pin them. Let's play to our defense and all that. So it's a bit different. And I think they're still in the figuring it out type scenario here. So that part is interesting. But that's where like they put up 24 points in like 8 minutes in Utah. I don't think anybody really saw that coming. Like just bang. bang, big play, big play, big play. And like, can Houston do that? Could Texas Tech do it again? I don't know, but that's my overall question, is that just generally speaking, whatever kind of game it is, can Houston score enough points? I think, can Texas Tech get out of their own way? If you go up there, if you go to Houston, you turn it over, you come out flat, you commit 100 yards worth of penalties, you're going to be in trouble. You can't keep living like that.
There is a chance all of that happens, both between, you mentioned Houston's own coaching staff, but it is a bye week that Texas Tech is coming off of. You've been told for a couple weeks now that your stuff doesn't stink. I think that those are all in the psychological pieces of this, not off the table. I think the year that you played Baylor off of a bye week, and you probably should have won that one. It's hard to play off of a bye week.
Yeah, the last 2 years they've come off the bye week great and awful. And what they're saying up here is, hey man, we don't know anything about last year. Most of the guys that are here, like, that had nothing to do with us. We're older, we're more mature, we're all that. Again, we'll find out together, like, what the reality is. But it is a bit tricky coming off of a bye. There's just no doubt about it. Some teams hit the ground running. Other teams, it's like, okay, middle of the second quarter, it's like, okay, finally we're woken up now. I mean, you just don't know. And that's probably what happened with Houston at Oregon State.
I think a lot of what happened in that one was Houston coming off of, they beat Colorado in what was frankly as exciting a Big 12 win, as dominant a Big 12 win as they've really had as a program, right? And so you then go into the bye week, you're playing on a Friday night across the country. Like, I think that all that played a factor. I want to pitch one more thing to you on this, blank wins if or whatever. If the score, crystal ball, the score is 20-17 or somewhere down in that low, do you feel confident that's a Tech win? Or I feel like that splits it more.
It probably does split it, but I mean, this is what I thought you were getting into in Salt Lake. I thought this is exactly what you were staring at, and I thought, well, this is going to be interesting because again, it's 13-10. It was 13-3, and Utah scores. That's the one drive they put together, and they got it in the end zone, and it was just 8 minutes and change left, and the crowd's going nuts. And then like 3 or 4 minutes later of game clock, the crowd was gone. And I didn't envision that happening. I certainly didn't think that that's what you, after watching the first 52 minutes of game action, go, yeah, this thing's going to end in a 24-point blowout or thumping, if you will, to quote some idiot from a couple of weeks back. Yeah, but I think a one-score game certainly would split it, or that's probably advantage Houston because that means the crowd's still in it. That means that you've probably come out flat if you're Texas Tech. You've maybe there's some turnovers or things like that. Like, that's the other thing too, is that like the special teams aspect of a game like this, because this is what we say what we want, and you could talk about Wegman and his 2 touchdown tosses in the fourth quarter, but you block 2 field goals. Granted, Oregon State special teams are a mess. They've been a mess. It's caused Oregon State coach Trent Bray to cuss a couple of times, one on live TV, one in his own press conference in multiple different weeks. But still, like 4 guys could have chewed up that game-winning field goal and blocked it. And so, because one of those kinds of plays turns this game one way or the other, depending on who it's for.
And Joe McGuire himself mentioned Mekhi Muse in the return game for Houston being something he kept an eye on, which I thought was interesting. Number 4. Mm-hmm. That's interesting because that goes back to last year's, like Joey's diving into the tape, because Mekhi, great kid, loved the kid, going to be very successful at something. But he hasn't done a lot yet this year. That's really more based on last year's video. The special teams a thing that you're worried about, if that's just something Joey's talking about because he's a coach?
No, I'm saying that if it becomes a close game, it's probably because somebody in special teams has either made a play or screwed something up, and it's flipped the momentum or something like that. That's what, because I think that just was such a heavy part of what allowed Houston to go win, is they made a couple of plays on special teams, and that's what turned it. Because think about it. If you don't block that field goal, all the touchdown passes and the storyline of undefeated and all this stuff, it's just gone. But because of the blocked field goal, it allowed all this other stuff to be, get pushed to the forefront. So that's what if you're talking about a 20-17 game, I guarantee you there's been a block of some sort, some lengthy return, some fumbled, muffed punt. I don't know. Something will have contributed to that, in my opinion.
And it's the kind of game where, like, with some high stakes, finally, 2 undefeated teams, you could see something like that happen. It's going to be a fun one Saturday, Chris. And you and Casey over at Locked On Texas Tech have been covering all week, every day, like we do here at the Locked On Network. I've been doing it at Locked On Cougs, obviously, as well. We also have a squad show coming up Thursday afternoon. We'll see what kind of shenanigans pop up and all of that. But thanks again for coming on and doing a crossover, Chris. I like talking ball with people from across the network.
And tell me real quick, tell the Tech fans about the blue, because is this?
Yeah, we can do this.
Because the when the Red Raiders played there in basketball, the game that JT Toppin was ejected from and the game that Grant McCaslin was ejected from, this is the uniform that Houston was wearing at the time. So I think Texas Tech feels like every time you go to Houston, it's like they're wearing blue. What is the deal?
So the official statement is that they're wearing it for an in-state conference rivalry game each year in each sport.
Okay.
They do it in tennis and golf and stuff too.
Okay.
It's
like the Oilers kind of thing,
So they say the city of Houston to go back to old police cars and stuff, but the Oilers are a big part of it, right? Gotcha. I will say I think they've picked Tech a couple of times because, full disclosure, it's a fan base that Houston clashes with. And they wear red. I think the fact that you don't want to be I think there's some of that, if I'm being completely honest. But it's a fun matchup. I think that's part of it. And then it sells. It sells like hotcakes. There are people in the city of Houston that have no connection to U of H that wear Houston blue just because. Right?
Love you, blue, man. Yeah,
gotta have some T-shirt fans, man.
Yeah, Bum Phillips and Earl Campbell and Mike Renfro back in the day. I mean, I was a big fan of those Oiler teams back then.
We can talk some Warren Moon and stuff too. Man. That's a whole separate podcast.
Okay.
That's been Chris Level. This is Park Ranger, Locked On Cougs, Locked On Texas Tech crossover. Thanks and see you tomorrow. Locked On Cougs and Locked On Texas Tech Prime and Locked On Podcast. Now your teams every day. I give a go Cougs. I don't know if you wreck them or not, but go Cougs, Chris.
Bang bang. Yes, guns up.